Hi, this is the Suprema Senior Center in our third edition of the show Aging Well in Wadsworth. This is your life. And today I'm really excited to welcome special guest Don Bolich, also known as Chaplain Don Bolich.
Right.
So welcome. We're glad you're here today. So let's start. This show is about you and your life. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born here in Wadsworth, 1956. Down at where the altar care is now, that was Wadsworth Rittman Hospital. And I was born there in that building. And then grew up on West Berge Street, which I'm still there. I still live in the home I was brought home as a baby.
That is really fascinating.
I was only gone 2 years. I lived in Canton, but still there. And I always kid and say I'm probably going to be there for the duration. But we had, I'm the fourth generation of South End in Wadsworth. And my family came there in the 1840s.
Wow.
And there is a street named after us on 94, Bolich Drive, and that was my ancestors' farms down there from Johnson Road on down to Eastern, or Wall Road. So that was our family farm.
That is so neat.
Yeah.
So you were born into Wadsworth. Do you have siblings? Were you the first, or where are you in the lineup?
I'm the baby of the family. My parents are deceased. I have two older sisters, Carol, who graduated, first graduating person in the Wadsworth High School in '61. And then I have a middle sister, Brenda, who graduated in '66, and then I was 74. So they live here in town one lives on Wolf Avenue and one lives on Route 57.
Wow, so you all stayed right here in Wadsworth. That is pretty, just very interesting. So Wadsworth, you said you graduated from Wadsworth High School.
74.
And it wasn't on campus where we're at right now. Where was Wadsworth High School when you graduated?
It was more towards Broad Street, closer to Broad Street.
Okay.
And that's where it was.
It was the old high school right here on Broad
Yes,
Street.
the old high school. It was all the classes. You had to go from each building to each building, and it was. They said it was a California design, and so in the wintertime it was very cold from going to class to class. But yeah, my sisters both went there, graduated from there also.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what happened after high school graduation? Where did life take you?
I was involved. We were raised in the Church of the Nazarene, which was it was a good church, and but Wadsworth Nazarene was a little smaller. So at 15, I went to Barberton Church of the Nazarene and was involved in a singing group that traveled all around. There were 16 of us, traveled around the state of Ohio and sang Bill Gaither songs at that time. That was probably 71, 72, and I was a teenager. And so when I was about 14, I went to get a job in a funeral home in Copley on a Saturday. Back then, the minimum wage was $1.50 an hour, and I worked on Saturdays running the sweeper and dusting, and that's how my career kind of started in the funeral service. And I worked different jobs in my career, management for an old shoe company called Noble Shoes years ago. But I always went back to the funeral service. I always liked the funeral service, and I got involved. There was a gentleman in Seville, Dick Armstrong. I helped him manage that for about 35 years. And then in 2006, Mr. Gilman, who had a funeral home in Rittman, approached me. His people were retiring, and he needed somebody to go out at night and do transports for him because they had closed the ambulance service, and he had minimum help. So I started a transport service for funeral homes, and we do about 60 transports a month for like 12 funeral homes. And so that's how that started. And then right around that same time, I went to school I was looking to be a police chaplain. That was something I always wanted to do. But before that, in 1995, I got an injury, and I had a head injury, and so I decided not to be involved with police department. So right around that time frame, Mr. Cox, who owned Cox Funeral Home up in North Wadsworth, had a funeral service, but had no minister. And so he called me and asked me if I would officiate a funeral. That's how that started. And the gentleman we did for that funeral service, 3 weeks later, his nephew had passed. He was a young man in a tragic accident. And so that's how that started, and just word of mouth. And now I serve 9 funeral homes as a chaplain and Western Reserve. So that's kind of how that started. And it's very enjoyable. You get to help people in their hour of need, and
Sure.
And because about 50 to 55%, I'm told, people who walk through the doors of the funeral home have no church connection today. At least 50%, which is kind of sad. That's not
Interesting.
Yes, that's not how I was raised, but it's just people are busy. We live in a busy time, and so it's a good service, and I'm glad I can do it. I'm still involved with the funeral homes, and it's enjoyable. I mean, if you can enjoy doing that type of thing, but you're bringing comfort to people, and that's
Absolutely.
and but people will come up to me and they'll say, "You did a good job. You do a good job." And I said, "Well, it's not me. It's what God has anointed me to do, and how my parents raised us 3 children. And you have to give credit where credit's due." And so I go, and I always say my job is to bring comfort to that family. And we went through a lot of deaths in our family. In 1 year, in 4 years, we buried 4 people in my family. And so I do 100 services a year, but my heart still aches for people. And I always say, if I get to the place where it doesn't ache for people, I have no business doing it. And so that's kind of my career.
Wow.
I'm semi-retired. I'm almost 69. But I always say, and I have to say, I have a girlfriend who's a retired nurse, and we've been together almost 29 years. She lives about 3 miles from me, but everybody thinks we're married, but she's always been very encouraging. Her name's Elaine, and she's always been very encouraging to what I'm doing, and very supportive. And I think in your life, that's what you have to have, somebody that encourages you and supports you, and that's
kind of where life brought you from when you were 15 and got that, taste for helping and serving.
Yeah.
And what you do is very meaningful, for sure.
It is.
Well, let's go back. One of the questions I usually like to ask is, when did your life intersect with Wadsworth? And obviously you were born and raised in Wadsworth. So tell me a little bit about, what was it like growing up in Wadsworth, Ohio?
When I was growing up, of course, being born in 1956, lived on West Bergie, which I said I was, I'm still there. South end of Wadsworth was kind of like a little town in itself. It was mostly ethnic people. I grew up on a street that we had 6 Italian families on our street. And South Wadsworth, I can remember walking to school, to the old Franklin School, and I can remember going up the one street, and I could see sometimes the Hungarian or the Italian ladies, they wore babushkas at that time. And a lot of people don't know exactly what that is, but they were sweeping their sidewalk, and I can remember the people, they didn't know how to speak English. A lot of them did not speak English in this town. And so it was, I can remember a lot of the businesses. We had like 19 restaurants in town, and they were all busy.
Were they all downtown or spread out?
No, they were spread out. We
Okay.
had several down in the south end, and we had there wasn't anything hardly in North End.
Okay.
In '64, that was pretty much. I remember my dad talking from where like Casa del Rio is, where the bridge is. That road went to Sharon Center, and my dad talked about that it was a dirt cinder road at that time. There was nothing up there. And Nazarene Church was built in 1961.
Okay.
There was nothing there. And so actually where 261 and High Street come together, that's where the city limits stopped. Stopped right there at 261 back in the day. So growing up in Wadsworth was, everybody knew everybody. I mean, I think that's how I got started, maybe interested in the funeral service. My mom and dad were always going to see somebody at the funeral home. Of course, I was a little guy, and they always took me, and they knew everybody. You know, it was little. It was 9,000 people back then. It's 23 now. So it was different, but it was fun. My neighbor, the ones that I played with in my neighborhood, we're still friends, and they still live in town, and we're still friends, and we see each other quite a bit. Matter of fact, one of the guys that I grew up with, he worked for me for about 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he retired as a police dispatcher. But it was just, you know, I can remember my mother, you know, she did a lot of canning, and she worked. My dad worked. He worked for the city for 40 years.
Really? What did your dad do for the city?
When he retired, he worked for the meter department, and he loved it. He walked 10 miles a day.
Okay.
And he loved that job. And then he was a special deputy for the sheriff's department for about 15 years.
Wow.
And Chippewa Lake, which was an amusement park here in the county, he was assistant police chief there also. And I worked 2 years as a police officer at Chippewa Lake Park.
Oh.
And so it was an interesting life. It was a little town at that time, and I kind of hated to see it grow. Really, when it started growing, it was like, wow, I don't know if I like this or not.
But you stayed, and I'm sure you've seen so many of the benefits of, you know, Wadsworth is still such a great town. That I know here at the Senior Center, we see so many people, maybe they've moved away with their careers, but they come back.
Yes.
And that's a testament to Wadsworth that you've stayed all these years.
I did. I was gone 2 years. I worked in Canton, had a job in Canton a couple of years, but I came back and moved to Columbus for, I think, maybe a month, and I was like, this is too big. I can't take this. So, but I came back. And,
Wadsworth's home. So how do you find yourself active in Wadsworth now?
With doing the chaplain work,
Sure.
Because I work with the funeral homes. I work with Western Reserve National Cemetery.
Okay.
People that come from out of town that have no ministers to do, I'm on their list to be called. And so I'm involved with Western Reserve National Cemetery and one Cox Funeral Home in North End. I'm the chaplain there. And so 9 funeral homes total. Wow. So just, you know, working in the community as a chaplain, you know, and it's at one point I thought about going to the Salvation Army and maybe working with the Salvation Army as a chaplain, but you know, God, you might think you know what you want to do, but sometimes, you know, God has different ideas, and he pushes you in a different direction, and it's like, how am I going to do this? You know, I didn't buy my house until I was 50 years old, and I lived with my parents all my life except 2 years.
Okay.
And it was nice. It worked out. Then they passed, and I had a lot to face. I had a house to buy and a business to start, and honestly, it was kind of scary. And I know I was scared at 50. And so I just, you know, at one point in my life, I just looked up and I said, God, I can't do this anymore. I got to put it in your hands. And it worked. You know, and I think, you know, my theory is I go to bed happy and I wake up happy. I do. And I told my doctor, the last time I was at my doctor, I said, you know, if I go out of this office and this is the last you ever see me, I said, I'm happy. I've had a good life, and you know, you have to. I try to keep myself stress free. That's a big important. The older you get, I don't want stress.
Sure.
Yeah, I try not to. I stay away from stress. As we visited the other day, I brought 3 vehicles to the car show, and so that's something that I enjoy.
Sure.
And so you have to kind of see which direction you're going, and I always say you have to be happy with yourself before you can make anybody else happy.
That's really good advice for aging well.
Yeah.
Because that's part of, you know, the name of the show is Aging Well in Wadsworth, and you just really shared some good advice. Any other advice for aging well and that happiness?
And you have to, and it's important, even if you're not married, it's wonderful to have you've got to have, I think it's important to have a special companion. And as you know, we get older as adults, and some people they lose their parents, they lose their wives, but it's nice to have the right companion.
Sure.
And I've been fortunate with that, with Elaine. And, we do. Sometimes we'll even go in the vehicle, and sometimes we don't talk a lot, just a little bit. And, we share things, and there's 5 years difference in age, but we still grew up at the same time, and I remember all the hot rods in Wadsworth and the guys driving their hot rods and the drive-ins and things. But I think it's keep yourself out of stress, try to go to bed happy, try to wake up happy, and share your life with somebody that's important in your life. And I think
that's great. The social connection, that's such an important thing that you mentioned. And that's one thing here at the Suprema Senior Center. We offer the opportunity for anybody 55 or better to have that social connection. Our membership is free. And share with us, what's your favorite thing to do here at the Senior Center?
Well, I enjoyed the car show.
I was going to say, it just happened last week.
But I'll come up here and I'll see people that I've known all my life.
Nice.
There was a lady that just walked out. She knew me when I was probably 3 years old. She just walked out. She was friends with my sister.
Wow.
And there's a girl sitting in here today. I was on the Wadsworth EMS for a couple of years as an EMT.
I did not know that.
I was in the first class that started out of that fire department for the EMS.
What year was that?
About 1983, 82.
Wow.
And there's a lady sitting in here today, and she lived down the street from me, and she was expecting her first child. And I was called to her house one night. She was ready to deliver her baby. And I was a truck driver that night, and I can tell you, we went to her apartment. I didn't waste any time getting her to the hospital.
Oh, I'm sure. So it wasn't born on your vehicle.
No, it wasn't. No. So I said it took about 3 minutes, but she's sitting in here today, and every time I see her, I think of that day.
That's
so. And I just ran into her daughter at Walmart, and I can remember taking her up to the hospital room and putting her on the bed and wishing her good luck. And I just talked to her daughter, the one that was she was delivered that. So it's been an interesting journey.
That's awesome. Well, Wadsworth still has that small town feel. Even though it has grown since when you were a boy, it definitely has grown, but it has the small town charm, which is just wonderful. And I know you really enjoyed the car show. What vehicle did you bring? It was just this past Friday.
I had 3 vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a 85 Mazda RX-7. That one had all the Winnie the Poohs and Tiggers. And then our 97, I always say that's Elaine's car because she loves to drive that convertible. It's a Sunfire convertible. That had the big Pink Panthers in it.
Okay.
And then I had a 62 Chevy truck, and that had Tickle Me Elmo, was like 16 in it. So, but it's great to see people's reaction when they see stuff like that.
Sure.
There was a little boy that come up, and I had this little. It was an Eeyore, and its ears flapped, and he was in a wheelchair. He was a young little guy, and he just he was dancing to that little dancing Eeyore, and that's what it's about. It's not really. I mean, I've gotten trophies with the vehicles, but really, what it's all about is making those people and those kids happy, and that's what I like.
That was fun. So last Friday it was our Christmas in July themed car show at North Pole Crafters Market, and we had over 300 people. We drew people from all over the community of all ages, like you said.
Yeah.
And so thank you for bringing your vehicles out. We had 45 vehicles that were registered. I think there was 43 that actually came.
Yep.
And you were a big part of that. So
yeah, it's. I even got Elaine to drive one of the cars.
That's great.
I got her to drive one. But,
that's great.
Another thing I like about here, I never really got involved in it until I got involved with the car shows, but I come up here to eat, and I like to eat lunch here. I love like when you have sloppy joes and things like that. And the food's really good.
It really is, and the
good.
prices.
The price is reasonable, and
can't beat the prices.
It's really, I like to eat here. It's neat.
That's awesome. And the Suprema Cafe, they're operated now with the Medina County Office for Older Adults. They've been operating it for just over a year now, and I can tell you on Friday the line was nonstop.
Oh, I had to come in 3 different times. Yeah,
it was great food, great prices, breakfast and lunch, anything in between. And you recently just finally got your key tag, and we got your member photo.
And I got my buddy who had the 1950 Ford car. He lives 2 doors down from me.
That's
and
nice.
He's lived there, I don't know, 40 years.
You just brought him in, and he joined.
He joined.
For the first
and Elaine
time.
joined. Elaine joined
That's
too.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And with that key tag, you can get free unlimited hot coffee or hot tea with any purchase in the cafe. If you didn't know that, that's a
And another
really
thing,
cool perk.
another one of my buddies that comes in here, he comes and his wife, they come and walk every day. And I had open heart surgery 4 years ago, very extensive surgery. And so in the wintertime, it's different. You kind of have a tendency to gain weight and not be as active. So Elaine and I were talking and said, we need to come up here and walk.
That's a great goal.
We need to come up and walk.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the wintertime, you really can't always walk at the sidewalks, in Ohio, because there could be ice or snow. And so walking the track here, and I will have to, after we're done here, I'll have to fill you in on our walking challenge. You both could join. It starts September 1st, so I'll fill you in on that. It's open for anybody. And
it's nice to do it in wintertime because after heart surgery, you're not supposed to breathe in cold air,
Right.
and so
good point.
Yeah, so it's that would be nice for both of us.
Sure, that's a really good point. Well, is there anything else you would like to share about your life, about living in Wadsworth, anything at all?
I just a lot of good memories. And of course living in a home. I was brought home as a baby, and a lot of the people that live down there, their ancestors lived there, and then their grandkids moved there. And so it's like family. Everybody knows what everybody's dog and cat looks like. I'm an extreme animal lover, so I have animals. But it's nice. Everybody watches out for everybody, and I can't say that for every neighborhood, but in our neighborhood, everybody watches out for everybody, and it's nice. It's very, very nice. And I like the small. We always say when our street, West Bergie, we always say it's Bergie Village. We always call it Bergie Village, and they kid me and they always say I'm the mayor down there. But but I had a neighbor who just recently passed away. I officiated his funeral, and he was almost 101 years old, and he'd lived there ever since he was like 35 years old.
Wow.
And so now actually I'm the oldest original person on our street, the original that has been there all their life. And now my buddy Bob is older than me, but he's not been there. That's not where he was born and from. But yeah, I just like the little village, little town feel, and it's amazing because I've lost a lot of friends, but I still can go in town and still go into a restaurant and still see the people like I went to school with or that my mom and dad grew up with. Some of them are still around, and that makes it nice, because you go into like some of the cities like, bigger cities like Akron or Cleveland, you don't have that. You don't have it. And I guess that's why I'm still here, And will I ever leave? Not at this point. I doubt it.
You're a Wadsworth lifer, hometown, born and
my
raised.
sisters are still here. My sisters, and they're older than me.
Yeah.
One's 13 years older than me. The other one's 8 years older than me, and they're still here. And so there's something to be said,
Absolutely, absolutely. That is a really cool thing about Wadsworth. It's just it becomes your home, and you want to stay.
I know my mother came from West Virginia, and my dad was born here, but my mother come from West Virginia when she was like 3, and when she passed, she was 84, and she never left that house that I'm in now. That she stayed there till she passed, and but she came from West Virginia, and then she lived in Rittman a while. So I know a lot of people in Rittman too, and I go down there and interact because I'm also work as a chaplain for the funeral home down in Rittman. And so but it's a nice little town too. A lot of people that worked with my mother at the box factory at the PCA, and and a lot of them were from the same town in West Virginia that Mom was from. So we talk a lot about West Virginia too. But
neat heritage that you have. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
know you brought something you wanted to read.
well, we were talking about life and where does life go, and how you interact with things, and life's journey, and it's called Journey Through Life, and it says, life is a journey all people partake, one step at a time with decisions to make. We all have choices for right or wrong in the journey through life as we travel along. And sometimes there's joy and sometimes there's strife. It's a part of the journey we take through this life. It says our God has a plan. It's truly His way. God's Spirit will guide us each step every day.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing those words. What a great way to end a show about your life and the meaning that you are still giving to, you're serving those at the time of their greatest need. And that's wonderful that you're there for them.
And I think you have to, you have come from a good family, but it's important that you let God. I know in parts of my life, I wanted to do things my way and do things on, but I think if you kind of step back and you say, God, I think it's time that you need to guide me a little bit, not me guiding me, and so I think if you have a good family and you have a good relationship with God, and I think that's very important.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being on our third episode of Aging Well in Wadsworth. This is your life, and if you're watching this and you want to be on the show, reach out to Lori Wilkinson here at the Suprema Senior Center. We'd love to share your life, Aging Well in Wadsworth. This is your life. Thanks for joining us.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.